Okay, welcome to our podcast, and we are the Outcasts. Woo!
Yay!
Here we have our special guests. Their names are
Gabby.
Misa.
And Ryan.
Wow, and I'm Chris. I'm going to be your host for tonight. So, I've been reading this book. Can you guys guess what the title of the book is called?
Can you
Is
give us a
it
hint?
Freakonomics?
Wow! How did you guess that?
You know, because we read it in class and it was super interesting and it had so much information, and I was just so glad to read that great book.
Oh my god, can you give us a preface of what the book's about?
I can do that. So, we have, in the first 3 chapters of this amazing book, we have the topics we learn about are incentives, conventional wisdom, and information asymmetry.
So
Asymmetry.
Asymmetry. Yeah.
Asymmetry.
Can someone give us a basic rundown of what those are?
So, and what, incentives?
Yeah.
Okay, so an economic incentive is motivation driven based on like money, right? Or gain or loss.
Yeah, financial gain.
Yeah,
or loss.
financial gain or loss. And then someone want to do moral incentives?
Moral incentives are the motivation to do something based on one's own personal beliefs.
And then social incentives are things that you do on your interpersonal gains or loss.
Mm-hmm.
So, interpersonal gains or loss would be like advancement in like the social ladder.
Yeah. Or your reputation.
And we kind of talked about. Sorry, do you want to go?
No, it's okay.
And we kind of talked about this in class, and let's just maybe related to where we are now in high school. What do you think is the strongest incentive, like to you personally? Like, what matters to you the most?
In high school, I think that just socially getting through high school is really important. I know that there's a lot of people who do it for the economic incentive or maybe a moral incentive if they're like doing it for their family. But I think that social incentive is probably the strongest one because you interact with so many people. Anyone else have a differing opinion with that?
I think a lot of people, they just want to graduate high school and that they do anything to get that grade, which would be like an economic incentive.
So definitely in high school, we have a bunch of things to do, like, right? Mm-hmm. Y'all have your things to do. We have a lot of homework. Homework, that's a topic. I have a lot of strong feelings about homework. What about you guys?
I think homework is a very big topic because it can be seen as good or bad. Personally, I also see pros and cons, and I think overall homework is a proper aspect to our current education in society, but at the same time there are definitely flaws, just like there are flaws in almost everything.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So homework is, well, at least I believe that most teachers assign it just to strengthen your knowledge over the topic, but I feel like a lot of times it's really unnecessary because it can, if too much is given, it can create a lot of stress, which leads you to have like unhealthy habits like procrastinating. And if some students are desperate enough, they might even land on cheating, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like so
wow,
they can just get the
cheating.
grade.
So, what causes the stress to do your homework would be like the economic incentive to get good grades, because some teachers, they make homework worth a lot, some teachers don't, but it definitely impacts your grade some way.
I think there's also, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but I think there's a social incentive to not doing homework as on the other side of the coin, because homework is time, basically, right? And especially where we live, time is a lot of things. Time is the ability to go out with our family, time is the ability to go out with our friends, and time is the ability to spend into homework. And personally, I think that there's a lot of times in which we just want to give up homework so that we can spend time with other people. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Any experiences you want to share?
Yeah, I think, specifically at Evergreen, a huge thing is being at the top and taking a lot of AP classes and getting straight A's. So in AP classes and stuff, those give a lot of homework and those take a lot of time. So I have 2 AP classes, so I can see how there's a lot of homework. And personally, there's a lot of times where on the weekend I can't make plans with friends or do anything else, like do any other extracurriculars because I have to do my homework. Or if I do end up doing something else on the weekend, I end up cramming a lot of my homework at night on Sunday night, which is definitely not good because I don't get enough sleep. So yeah.
But at the same time, teachers want you to do their homework for a reason, typically, right? And that is to practice. And this practice goes into testing and such and things and such, so that you guys have the proper tools to fulfill any testing that you might have to require. What are your opinion on testing? I know the tests we have are pretty hard nowadays.
Yeah, well, from AP Psychology, there are two different kinds of tests, aptitude tests and achievement tests. And aptitude tests are essentially tests that test your natural ability or your potential to do well or to do bad in a certain area. And achievement tests essentially just test what you have learned. So basically, achievement tests are all the tests that we take in school, like your final exams, your multiple choice quizzes. All of those are achievement tests because they test what you have learned. And I think that tests can be good and bad as well, but I think they're essential for schooling because it gives people the incentive to actually study and learn the content. So yeah.
But definitely there's a lot of things that are behind the surface when it comes to testing, right?
Can you clarify?
Like, I guess there's sometimes when you go into like the really important testing, then we have incentives as to doing perhaps some type of background or some type of help beforehand in order to fulfill those tests. What do you guys have to say about that?
Oh, well, I guess you could relate it to, what chapter? Is it chapter 2 of economics? Wait, information asymmetry?
Yes, and information asymmetry is basically when one group has more knowledge over the other. So this can be applied to testing where some students who have, like, say, more educated parents, they have an advantage when it comes to their own testing, I guess.
Like minority students versus other students, so like students who are from, let's say, affluent households and others. So for example, a student who would be from, I guess, a family that's well off, well prepared, have like people who pay for private tutoring and all of that, like obviously those students would have better test scores and I guess which ends in better grades. As for the students who don't really have that extra help and could really be struggling, yet they're still getting the same education, I guess that's where you could apply information asymmetry, is when just one group has more knowledge over the other.
I thought that there was some type of way to help prevent that though, wasn't there?
I think it was affirmative action, which is a lot of colleges use that now to prevent that, like hoping to give both sides like balance. They're just trying to balance it basically. But there are cons to that too. It's not all perfect.
Can you give us more insight into that, or
like the cons, like the negative
Yeah.
parts of it? A lot of people think that it's unfair. They believe that what you work for should be what you receive, and they don't think it's fair that one student will simply get an advantage just because they lived in poverty or that their parents are from like a minority group, like Latinos. As opposed to like Americans, like white people and Asians.
I see. So from that, we can see that testing does provide a lot of reason to. Testing is really important in general, right? So why does this testing why is it so important in the first place?
It's important because it helps teachers see where some students are excelling and where some students are not doing well in, and it also shows how much the student really is working in that class, or if they're trying their hardest to study and all that. So I think it really helps the teacher as well as gives the student a perspective on how well they're doing.
Testing can also really impact one's grade, which if you do well in high school especially, it can help you get into a better college and get a better education so that you can get a well-paying job or career.
So the overall view is that if you do well in school, you just have a better overall career and lifestyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
But diving into high school itself, it's just a lot more than pen and paper, right? There's a lot of social aspects to that. Can you guys give an experience as to how socially important high school is?
Sometimes it depends on the person, but sometimes a social incentive could weigh out like an economic incentive. Like, there's a stereotype that I guess Asians are nerds. I'm pretty sure we've all heard of that one. And I will see some people like just wanting to fit in, so they would purposely like not do well in school just so that people don't stereotype them or put them into like a certain class, or just to fit in better.
This reminds me of a story. You guys remember?
Notes of a native speaker.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Can you show?
Liu, is that his last
I think
name?
like Eric Liu. Was that
Yeah,
his
Eric
name?
Liu. He talks about how he tried so hard to be more like his predominantly white school. He tried to defy his stereotypes because he was Asian and he didn't want to be seen as. He didn't want the stereotypes to define him.
But why is that? Why would that be important in high school? Like, just as, like, why socially would we want to fit in?
To seem cool, to have a good high school experience. If you can be like at the top of the social ladder, then you could be more popular.
I think this also relates to the concept of discrimination, because also it relates to, in AP psychology, a term called in-group bias, because people, in-group bias is essentially when people are more likely to stick with and have a bias to people similar to them, or people in their group or ethnicity or race, someone who is similar to them. So this has to do with in-group bias, because in school you could see a lot of like friend groups are very similar, so people tend to stick with them. Also, in-group bias can also lead to incentives, because for example, if a guy is introduced into a new friend group and that friend group is heavy on academics and they really care about grades, he is more likely to be involved with his grades and try and get straight A's as well, because his group does that.
So what you're trying to say is that being in a group is just beneficial in general, right?
I think that would be more like, it would be information bias discrimination, so there's also a bias like on skills, so he would probably fit in better with that group because he does well in school like the rest of them.
Like, have you guys any experience with that? I'm definitely guilty of sticking with people who have like maybe a similar skill cap. Oh, it's a bad thing. Like, I guess it is a bad thing, but that's just how I'm naturally drawn to those types of people, right? So, as like playing a devil's advocate card, kinda, I guess not, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be seen as a bad thing to be in a certain group, because they might have negative influences on you which you may not know, or you actually may know and you decide to follow it. And also, it just may not be a proper group for you, but you just don't know yet.
Actually,
So, our library reservation is running out and we kind of need to go soon. Once again, this has been the Outcast Podcast with, once again,
Gabby.
Misa.
And Ryan,
that was Chris. How do we end this?
thank you for listening.
To summarize, high school is
Stressful. It's terrible.
And there are many different aspects when it comes to the social parts of it, your grades, and just everything in general. Like, there are just so many aspects of schooling, and in the end, you can do well if you work at it.
Wow, so
Thank you,
inspirational.
Ryan.